Okay, well, it's a big welcome to Lee and Anna, who've just done a fabulous session for us at the first many to come Middlesborough Teaching and Learning Festivals. And really over to you guys after a wonderful morning that we've had.
It was, and because you started, didn't you?
Yeah.
And
I was like your warm up.
warm up. I like that idea. And I think it was for you and for both of us. It's that first lesson is understanding where the students are coming from, isn't it? And I think for my own part, remembering where a student is coming from, what their issues might be, how they're feeling in a situation, remembering all those little facts that you gave, and the one that I gave about 1 in 7 children in the UK are abused, all of those different experiences, it actually helps me to keep my own emotions in check when I'm dealing with a student that's either very challenging or very aggressive, even somebody that might even be bordering on violence. That's the thing in my mind that keeps me calm. On the spot, I suppose, it's one of my on-the-spot strategies, is thinking, what am I dealing with here?
Yeah, and I think one of the things I would really be saying is what's very interesting is your background as well. It's not just in the educational sector, it's also you have this fabulous other life now, which I believe is a street angel.
Yeah, well, I guess I've always been involved in the world of young people ever since I was a young person, I suppose. So as a youth leader, and then I founded a charity that worked in school, did that for 14 years. So I've always been attached in and around education, but with young people. And now, even now, in my 40s, me and my wife, we act as street angels, which is just a way of helping Leeds, which is the city that I love. I love helping. I think, I guess being a good citizen, that sounds a bit cheesy, but you know what I mean? But also that idea of, actually, you get to see some of the extremes of behaviour, and it helps you understand some of the norms then as well. And there's some quite scary things that I see as a street angel that you didn't see in my generation, because we were talking about the difference in the generations. And I mean, for me, if you went out for a night with your mates, you stayed as a group with your mates, and there was a few waifs of strays along the way, but you stayed as a group. What I'm amazed at now as street agents, we find people that have been abandoned by their friends. So they go out for a drink or whatever, and there's quite hard drinking or whatever, and they just leave their friends. So we found, we've prevented as a team, street angel team, we've prevented many kind of assaults and violence and stuff, because we've just found people on their own who are incapable of getting home.
I think another interesting side to that is the change in female behaviour over the last 10 years. Because with the emancipation of females, with the changing of the socialisation process, we see more and more women becoming part of that drinking culture, more part of an aggressive culture. And of course, traditionally, what we always saw in women's reactions to abuse, divorces in the family, was them going more into themselves, low in self-esteem. So traditionally, when I first started working in further education, I was dealing with more girls who had extremely low self-esteem, were self-harming. Now you're dealing with girls that are just as likely to be aggressive as your male students. And that's quite an interesting change that's happening. You must see that on the streets of Leeds, as well as in colleges as well.
Yeah, I find that weird thing that I talked about, where you get the Generation Y has this mixture of high self-esteem but with low self-esteem. So they can be very confident, so they can go out as a hen party or as a stag do, be super confident, doing dares and grabbing people off the street and kissing strangers and all sorts of random activities. But then you ask them to do a presentation at the front of the class and they'll be mortified. So it's this high, they're really confident, and then all of a sudden, boom, completely flat.
There's another interesting thing that for me came out of the presentation, is that sort of focus on students that are quite privileged. But the problem with some students that are privileged materially and come from high socioeconomic backgrounds is actually they have very little time investment from their parents or loved ones. And actually they are very neglected children with very high challenging behaviours. And actually for me, a lot of challenging behaviours isn't so much a socio-economic thing, although of course that comes into it greatly. It's actually about the pure neglect of so many children. And that's just as common in middle class backgrounds as it is in working class backgrounds. If you've got a strong bond with somebody that really loves you, really cares for you, you do not want to let that person down. But when a parent does not bother to bond with their child, that child is free to commit any delinquent act, and actually they know that nobody cares about what they're doing. So for me, it's sort of nowadays it comes away from socioeconomics, although of course that's still huge, and a huge bearing on challenging behaviours is what relationship does that child have with the parent or a carer or whoever that might be. And this is one of the reasons why so many children in care are vulnerable to committing acts of delinquency, because of course there's nobody in the care system that they can properly bond with. So it creates a whole sort of ricocheting effect across the nighttime economies that you're seeing, the daytime economies that we're dealing with in further education, that a lot of it, I think, for a lot of students is that pure lack of bonding. And that creates low self-esteem, creates aggression in young people. And again, it's just one of those little reminders that when we're dealing with somebody that's very, very difficult, it simply might be they've just got nobody in their life that really cares for them. And they could be they could look very, very privileged. And they might look like they've got somebody that cares, and they don't.
I was reading some research on eating disorders as well recently, and that really shocked me that they did lots of research on girls, particularly who had issues around eating with anorexia and bulimia and other conditions, and they found the only thing that they could find in common with them is that most of them had a poor relationship with their father.
Yeah.
Right.
So that was the only kind of common thing, because they're from all different backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds, but yet somehow, and it's kind of unfashionable to say it, but a relationship with a father figure or a male role model is so important. And when you don't have that, then if you don't have a relationship with a significant male, then when you first meet your teacher at school or in college and they tell you to do something, and a male has never told you to do something before. And so there's all sorts of complicated, but I found that really fascinating that no pressure for people like me that are dads.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
But even if you look at the effects of domestic violence on the students that you're dealing with, if you're a male brought up with a violent male father, you are 70% more likely to commit domestic violence.
Wow.
So those role models can work in very positive ways, they can work in very negative ways. But I suppose what we're alluding to here is that when you're faced with a student, all of those factors come into how they will treat you as a female member of staff, how they'll treat you as a male member of staff. And I suppose the question is you're dealing with somebody that has been that indoctrinated with certain views about women, about men, about society in general, is a further education college able to break those indoctrinations down? And even it could be that they've been brought up by a family that are excessively racist against travellers or certain communities. Can we break those views down in further education? My own experience of that is yes, but only to a certain extent, depending on how much empathy the young person has for human society in general. But it's about the fact that as further education, if we don't take responsibility for that, then who else will? Because some parents certainly won't.
Yeah, I mean, education is taking on a kind of parenting role, whether we like it or not. The extended hours, extended schools.
Yes.
Sometimes young people are dropped off at 7 in the morning and picked up at 7 at night in different areas. And that's kind of extremes, but that's the reality. And so there is a parenting role, and it's horrible to say that, but that's kind of how society is going.
Yeah.
So that brings pressures to teachers and lecturers and school and staff of FE colleges as well.
Yeah, definitely. That is interesting. Sorry, that's interesting. The whole thing about us having a parenting role, and it's, I suppose, as members of staff, I suppose it's psychologically accepting that when we work in further education, whether our role be teaching, estates, selling donuts at break time, in effect, in very, very minor ways, that's exactly what we're doing. Like in the talk, I tried to say if somebody is rude, actually if you work at reception or you are the lady or the man selling donuts, actually it is our responsibility to say, is that a nice way to talk? Because if we don't do it, it's accepting the fact that actually it doesn't happen in some homes. And that's the job that we're doing, regardless of, it's not just down to teaching staff, that's down to all staff.
It's just that a bit of the thing I talked about is the difference between engagement and delivery. There's often, because the government puts so much pressure on delivery of curriculum, then it's always about, no, we need to do this and deliver this piece of work, or Ofsted won't come in and they won't, or whatever. And really it's great learning takes place when you're engaging with people, and that means walking down the street here where we are inside of Middlesbrough College, or you know, being around in the cafeteria or whatever, that's as much about engagement, you know, as Anna said. And I think, so it's helping with the staff maybe to understand and encourage them that, you know, they do have stuff that they have to deliver, but they do that in a different way by engaging, by keeping certain rules, and by, as well, I think, injecting that sense of fun as well, because I think sometimes the downside of inspections and things is that we can lose a sense of humour and a sense of fun.
Yeah, it's also about those small bonding sort of things that we do. Like, you know, if you see a group of students, approaching them and being interested in what they're doing, and it doesn't matter what your role is in the college. You know, taking an interest in those students, because then when you do have to tackle an incident of challenging behaviour, you're not just always tackling students because it's a negative thing, you're also tackling students because they're doing something positive. And actually, as a member of staff, if you suddenly reflect on your week and you've tackled a lot of challenging behaviour but you haven't tackled any positive behaviour, and you haven't sort of tackled those good things that you've seen, then we're going about it all the wrong way. It's, you know, it's tackling a bit of both, isn't it, I think, which is a good thing that we're trying to achieve. Love that.
It's always nice to have other people involved. It's great. That's colleges for you. You never know what's going to happen to you. It's great.
That's the challenge of behaviour. I believe one of the things you're going to do for us now is, so you're going to give us a few of the tips that you know, so we can remind ourselves about them. And that's what we'll do now.
Yeah, I'll do a couple of bits to camera as a little aid to memoirs, little reminders, and if I can help anybody, then you can get in touch with me on my website, which is leejackson.biz, and you can find me if I can help any of the staff here. Of course, I'm happy to take phone calls or email me or whatever. I'm always happy to available.
Great.
And it's been great to work with yourself and Anna this morning. It's been great.
I've enjoyed it. It's been really good.
Wonderful. Thanks very, very much for that.
No problem.